Now that's significant. The Market Research Podcast.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this latest episode of Now That's Significant, a market research podcast. I'm your host, Geoff Lowe, and I'm a director at InfoTools. Today, we're joined by Bryan Smith, BHT Data Solutions Director for Ipsos Global. Hi, Bryan. Bryan is responsible for aligning technology developments with service line needs as they relate to the flow of data. Bryan ensures that stories, features, and capabilities developed by their tech team perfectly meet end users' needs. Sounds like a fantastic role, Bryan. Thank you so much for joining the show.
Well, thanks a lot for having me.
So, can we start off by hearing a little bit about you? What initially got you into the market research industry?
Yeah, for sure. So, believe it or not, my journey into market research started in high school. So I had a course in social sciences and really fell in love with the kind of research paradigm and trying to understand human behavior from a more kind of scientific lens, taking a hypothesis, testing it, and then validating that with external resources. At that point was literature articles and things like that. So that naturally led me down a path of academia. And so I actually went through two research programs, an undergraduate and a graduate degree. And then I kind of got the feeling that, you know what, academia wasn't for me. I had a little bit of sales experience historically with some of my high school, with some of the work that I did in high school and in my university career. And so I made a pivot into market research because I thought it's a really great way to marry the two interests, business and understanding human behavior. Market research is kind of where those two jive. And so I found myself in market research, and about 7 years ago, and I'm still here. So it must be good.
Excellent. Quite a similar path to me, actually. Do you have a guiding principle? Do you have a something that drives you to do what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I am really lazy. Now, you may think that is actually a very terrible guiding principle, but it's actually quite the opposite. It's been a lot of my focus is that if I can, I'm accountable. I guess the other pieces I'm accountable to. Being lazy and accountable is key. So the real piece there is that if I can do something easily, let's do it that way, especially if it's something that has to be repeated, right? I don't want to spend hours and hours and hours working on things. So I always look for efficient paths. And within market research, there's a lot of things that take hours and hours and hours. So there's a lot of room for innovation. And I mean, we've got a lot of different contexts and concepts across different styles of market research. So really, I've got a lot of work ahead, and I've got a pretty much endless career path, which is really exciting too.
It is absolutely. I think you and I could be brothers, actually, because I feel like I'm pretty lazy too. Okay, so let's get into the real guts of the subject for today's podcast. And there is a significant issue that you think people should be talking about more. What is it?
Well, I think that you really don't need a dashboard for a market research program.
Okay, yep. That's given the ubiquity of dashboards in market research today, or shall we say the not quite ubiquity, but the ubiquity for the desire for dashboards. That's controversial. Can you flesh that out a little bit? I mean, clearly there's more to this than just we don't need dashboards.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I'm not saying that you never need a dashboard. It's more so that the majority of cases, a dashboard in market research isn't a good fit. There are some cases where it is the right fit, and those cases they exist. We call them rare, from what I've seen in my experience with market research. The big thing is that very often with any market research program, there's always a lot of context around specifics of that project or that program. The sample that's used or how the data is displayed, and maybe even the breadth of the questions that are asked. And even in a 20-minute survey, which may be a quick survey for a respondent, you may have 40 or 50 questions. And if you need to visualize each of those and then need to look at specific targets, all of a sudden your dashboard that should have 3 to 5 KPIs has 120. And then you have a very kind of over-encumbered monstrous thing that requires its own training program to be able to use. And then in the end, 2 people use it. And so all of this effort goes into designing, defining, building these dashboards that most of the time don't actually meet the need. And that's the real key piece, is that dashboards are great when they meet the need, but understanding the need first is more important. And most often, dashboards are used as a proxy for quick data access.
So you seem to be arguing that badly designed dashboards not designed to meet the right need, are not always universally required in market research. Am I right there?
Mm-hmm. Well, and even just sometimes it's the actual content too, right? That's very often a dashboard is kind of table stakes in a market research buyer's RFP. And they may say, we need a dashboard, right? And then when you actually get into it, they need visualizations and the scope is very large. And so then it becomes a very high effort to get, even in well-designed cases, it's a very high effort to get that put together. And something that's meant to make data more accessible faster may take 6 months to get ready and released. And by that time, maybe they're already looking at another supplier, right? So there's kind of this push and pull where you have to have the right level of content for a dashboard, but I find very often it's too much content going in. So even well-designed dashboards with too much content have a lot of overhead for users. And that really kind of transitions to that other point where you have very low pickup for very low usage within the actual organization buying the market research.
Yeah, if it doesn't get used, all it does is incur a lot of cost and delivers no value. So can I drill into the need element to what you're saying? You're saying that a dashboard, if it meets a need precisely, it can be a good thing. Can you give us an example of what a typical need might be as expressed by a client?
Yeah, so a typical client need that we may see come across is that we need to have this multi-category, multi-country program reported once a month or once a quarter, and we need a dashboard. And that'll be the extent of the need, right?
We need a dashboard.
Cool. Need a dashboard. Great. Who's the audience? What's the purpose? What does the dashboard need to do, right? And those are the types of things that often aren't included in those initial RFPs. And it's really up to the suppliers to kind of put their best foot forward and offer that solution. And very often it's here's the bar, how high, not is that the right bar type of scenario.
We have a mantra here at InfoTools, which is listen to what a client says they want, but probe deeply to find out what they really need. Is that what you're talking about here?
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
It's spot on. It's really it's taking that layer back and saying like, yes, this is what you've asked for, but what do you need? How is it going to be used? Like, what are the end users within your organization going to do with it? Are they going to then take data from a dashboard, put it in a PowerPoint and share it with their internal stakeholders? Probably, right? Because they have certain commitments to their stakeholders to get metrics by certain times, and they're going to do the ways that work within their organization. Or maybe they're a little bit more advanced and they have some other things going on. But very often it's that there's a disconnect between what that actual need is, and it's more so just they see a dashboard, at least from my experience, as a way to deliver data quickly within their organization. Because when you're working with internal data like sales data or human resource data, flat types of data, they fit very well in a dashboard. And so they see that as a very good vehicle for delivering those types of data, right? But then when you add the complexity and domain context of a market research program, you have to include all of that in the dashboard, because if you don't, there's the risk that it could be misinterpreted. Like if there's a certain sample that's queried in one specific market, or there's a certain way a question is asked, that may change the way respondents behave. So there's all of these other types of biases and things that you have to try and cram into a small screen. And then you end up splitting that across multiple screens, and you have just this information overload that ultimately is still disconnected from that need.
So you mentioned that one of the use cases of a dashboard is to just take screen grabs or take visuals and put them straight into a PowerPoint deck and deliver that. Is the solution to the issue that you're raising here simply to cut out the dashboard and go straight to PowerPoint?
Potentially, right? There could be a need, right? And it's more so that it's a redefinition of scope of the dashboard, right? The dashboard shouldn't cover the entire market research program. It should cover the 3 to 5 KPIs that are most important for maybe that C-suite executive that's looking at it, right? Maybe it's something like brand awareness. Is our brand awareness going up or going down? There's a huge shift in market. What other barometers do we have that are kind of aligning with that? Right? That makes sense to go into a dashboard. Does a specific brand's imagery compared to a competitor among 18 to 24-year-olds make sense in that same context? Probably not, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to drill into this a little bit. I have a vested interest in getting to the bottom of this thing at InfoTools.
Sure.
You seem to be assuming, and I think you're assuming that a dashboard is static, kind of like a PowerPoint deck would be static. In other words, each of the views is a static view where you can see maybe some data-dense visualizations so that relations can be looked at across different things, but essentially it's static. Is there a definition, and maybe we don't want to call this a dashboard, maybe it's something else, but is there another kind of deliverable that is less static that would have value instead of a static dashboard or a PowerPoint deck?
Yeah, and I think
I'm leading you on there.
I think, yeah, I know where you're going, and I'm following. Yeah. So
good on you.
But yeah, it is on that data access piece, and yeah, the dashboards do need, for the most part, they need some static definition, right? There needs to be some behavior that's the same. There needs to be some hooks that users can work with to find that data in those ways. But I think really what meets that need better is a analytical platform or a tool that's suited for visualizing data, and that can be used to build a specific dashboard for that specific need, or be used to meet another need, like maybe, God forbid, they have a need for static tables and are back in Excel, right? But something like well, I mean, at least we're not printing them, so we've come a ways, and maybe there are still some folks out there who do print them, but for the most part, there are certain comforts that not only researchers at Ipsos are comfortable with, but clients are as well. And there may be specific reasons that is as a core need, right? And if you're able to meet that need as well, then you got a much better offer.
Do you think there's a place for people like us, like you, as an expert, to challenge the expression of those needs? So if somebody says to you, Bryan, I really need a set of Excel tables, can you deliver them? Do you feel compelled to challenge that?
To some extent, I do. But at the same time, change is a very interesting piece, right? Because in order for real change to happen, people need to want that change to happen, right? So if there are any sort of external factors to that, saying that is something that should change, you actually may get more pushback on it, right? So personally, I'm not a fan of tables. I think that they had a need. They do still have a need in some very rare cases, but for the most part, you don't need to have everything tabulated all at once, right? You can find maybe a smaller set of those tables, so you have that same level of comfort, and maybe it's just at the KPI level or at the total level or specific targets, right? And you can meet that need that way, but really having more flexibility and ownership in that process of how you investigate and interrogate that data is really critical. And when you're locked in tables, you have to kind of request everything, because if you don't have it, then you have to wait a few days to get that, right? And that goes, whether you're internal or whether you're one of our clients, it's the same thing, right? If you're a market research buyer and you're getting tables and you need to get some different cut or different view of that data, you go back to your supplier, they have to reprocess those tables in some way, shape, or form, whether they have a supplier that they use to supply them or they have a tool they use to build them. There's still going to be a lag time between when you make that request and when you need it. And really that time to data is always a critical need for clients. And that really drives the ask for the dashboard. So why don't we just put the data into the hands of the people that need it?
Yeah, I was hoping you'd get there, and you did. I'm going to put a hypothesis to you and get you to react to it, because I really buy into your line about drilling down to find out what the real need is. Can I suggest to you that ultimately, what our clients, anyone who invests in market research, what they're ultimately trying to do is understand their world a little better. Is there anything deeper? Do we ever need to go deeper than that in understanding what the need of a client really is, deeper than simply they want to understand their world a little better, and then it's up to us to figure out how do we best get them to do that, or help them do that?
Well, I think that's where it starts, right? I think it's a journey with a client in whichever context, right? Is that you have to help them understand what they need to understand, because we can't come up with all the answers, and coming with all the answers first makes us look very front heavy and puts us in a bad light, right? We don't want to assume that we know what they need. That's not a good spot to be in either, but we should have strategies to be able to work with our clients to help them navigate the different types of things they may need to use or leverage, or strategies to answer their questions, whether that's a business question, or whether that's a specific need on delivery timing, or maybe it's an external need to both of those that's driven by some internal stakeholder need that's completely obfuscated or invisible to a market research supplier. There could be some other driving force there. And really helping our clients be successful helps us be successful. So I think the key piece is really helping navigate through the different journey of needs assessment and understanding, really, that it's more than just what it starts as, and that you have to go on that journey with them.
Yeah, I think if we help them, to your point about if we help them, it helps us. If we help them get to where they want to be, they're going to come back for more, and they're going to want to pay for it, and that's a good thing.
Exactly.
Everybody wins, promoter,
right?
Yeah.
The best
exactly.
the best service is always one that has somebody like ecstatic and smiling, right? And if you provide really great service and really can deliver on that, then they're going to look for anyone else, because they don't need to, right? It's only when you have those service disconnects where you have to start worrying about churn and things like that. But that's my old business side coming through.
Yeah. So I think we've landed on the right place here in terms of the key thing here is understanding the needs. You're not saying dashboards are never good, or anything else is good and something else is bad. What you're saying is that we need to understand the need, and then use our expertise and our experience to figure out what we can deliver to meet that need. Ultimately, we're going to do some market research. We're going to come up with some insights which will generate understanding, and we can communicate that understanding to the client. Just to make this a little bit diagnostic or helpful, how is it? What do we need to ask? What are the questions that we need to be thinking about, or get our clients to think about, so that they really get to what the real need is?
If I had the answer to that question specifically, I would be forever employable. Wouldn't need to worry about. I would have solved everything.
I was really hoping you'd come up with something. We need clicks on this podcast.
Yeah, it would be really easy. Yeah, it's just like, here's the 10 points. Here's the 10 questions that you have to ask. No, it really does need to be. It needs to be domain specific, and really understanding client context is a key piece, because a strategy that may help you understand needs in one particular scenario, whether that's a market research methodology, or whether it's a specific category or a specific part of the world, may not work the same, right? So leveraging regional expertise about things that are important and how to ask the right questions, because the way we frame those questions in that need assessment also is important. So that is a very complicated question, and I don't have the answer. But if I do figure it out, I will maybe not let you know, because I can make a lot of money.
Oh, come on, we could make a lot of money together, Bryan. We'll do another podcast.
No.
Look, there's one more area that I want to drill into before we close off, and that is, I have a firm belief, and I want you to argue against me if you feel you need to, that in order to generate the best understanding, if we accept that having our clients understand their world a little better so they can do good things in their business, that's really what we're trying to help them do. I have a firm belief that having the client involved in the process of finding out is far more powerful than having them a passive partner in the process. What do you think about that? In other words, having them hands-on part of finding out.
Absolutely agree. And I would go one step further and say it's great if you can get the client involved, but ultimately if you can get their stakeholders involved too, right? If you can have everyone at the table who has a vested interest in the outcome of the research, and you can understand the different needs among the different stakeholders, then maybe you can make a plan for meeting the different stakeholder needs in different ways. And that helps your client ultimately do their job really well, because they're trying to kind of balance that push and pull between their internal stakeholders, which have competing needs, right? And if they only come to us with their needs, then we have a laundry list that may look very disparate. But if we understand the context of what that need meets, who it meets it for, then ultimately we can work with our clients to provide better solutions to meet those specific needs, right? If the dashboard need is really driven by a C-suite executive that needs to see a dashboard, then that's great, because we can limit the scope of that and we can deliver on that very, very well, right? And if the need for PowerPoint tables is driven by a need to integrate that data into a data warehouse, then maybe we can do that, or we can look at a better way of delivering that aggregate data, right? So when we really can peel back that one layer and talk to the next level of stakeholder and understand where their needs are at, we can help our clients be more successful in ultimately meeting those end needs. But partnership is critical for that, and very rare, I would argue.
And so I think we ultimately agree on that one. I think I might be thinking about it a little bit differently at a different level of involvement to you. I think it's really helpful for the client, and you differentiated between the client and the stakeholders at the client. So I presume you mean maybe insights professionals on the client side and their internal stakeholders, brand people, marketing people, C-suite.
Exactly.
I'm thinking, and argue against this if you feel you must, I'm thinking that having those clients, the research professionals, and their stakeholders directly involved in looking at the data, working with the data, playing with the data, finding things out directly from the data is the ultimate knowledge is power. And do you think so?
In part. So when a client is very data literate, absolutely makes sense. But data literacy, just like reading literacy, varies vastly. And so having the expectation that clients or even internal researchers at Ipsos have that level of data literacy to be able to interpret and make the right decisions, we should aim and strive to get there. But we have to understand that that's not going to be somewhere that we're going to be able to get short term, right? So I think there is a kind of some guardrails that should put in place. And as kind of market research suppliers, we should be able to help our clients along those journeys. And in some cases, our clients may be further along that data literacy journey than we are. So we can also learn from them in terms of things like data governance and how they're managing those types of complexities within large organizations. So I think it is an ideal to strive towards, but the reality is we've got to ground it and work with the people that are doing the work and help them in the way that makes the most sense.
Hence the partnership ideal that you mentioned earlier. So let's just finish off by, I'll ask you, is there any client, any relationship, any project that you've been involved in recently where you think the process of understanding the needs, the delivering on those needs has worked in an ideal way?
None that I've been involved with or exposed to. I'm sure they exist. I found them to be rare in that case, but because it is very tough to balance that partnership, because you have to have that trust and to let each other into each other's organizations, and how much you let people in and behind the scenes is a very key piece. I don't have any specific examples where I've seen that be really successful as of yet, but
I guess what that means is that there's potential for us to improve, right? To improve us being research professionals, improve the way we understand needs and deliver on those needs, and therefore deliver value.
Absolutely. I think there's always room for improvement in every aspect of life. And like even within the market research industry, there's improvement on our side in terms of working with those clients and building that trust and partnership. And there's also improvement on the client side in terms of kind of working collaboratively with that kind of what is the ask, even at that start, right? That just pulling the conversation back to the beginning, that ask of we need to have a dashboard, right? If that's the only thing that's communicated about it, it's going to be very hard to successfully deliver on that and meet that need when it's a black box.
How optimistic are you that we're going to continue a path of improvement in this regard?
I'm very optimistic. So I think that there's no reason that anything would get worse. And I think that as people in general across all walks of life become more data literate and have more access and flexibility to data and are able to work with it more frequently, they're going to understand the importance of having experts and leveraging that expertise in the right way, shape, and form. And some of that is going to need to be in forms of partnerships, of letting people in behind the scenes a little bit where it makes sense and to the extent where it's right.
That, Bryan, I think feels like a really good place to finish off on that optimistic note that we're going to continue getting better. So thank you so much, Bryan, for joining us today. And a big thanks to all of you who have been watching today's episode. We really appreciate it if you subscribe to the podcast. It really helps get the message out to more people who think like you. And if you feel like you did, like it and leave a review. So this has been Now That's Significant.